left, right, up, down, and everything in between. Our collective and individual attentions are being pulled in every direction. In 2020, messaging and media consumption is speeding up, while human contact is slowing down. In the midst of a global pandemic, how can we remember, activate, and express what is most important? Words are powerful. We communicate our basic needs through language, and always have. Even as children, when yelling or screaming for something that we needed, we used language. It is even more important now to sift through the milieu of options of language that we have presented to us each and every single day, to find our authentic message and affirm the dignity, worth, and value of each person. My name is Reverend Wesley Morris. I'm the senior pastor of Faith Community Church here in Greensboro, North Carolina. It is a local, multiracial, multigenerational, inclusive fellowship. And we have a history of challenging systems of domination, separation, and division as our faith calls us to speak to the work and the power of social justice. I have found it increasingly important to speak, shout, and sing and live a life that represents unity amongst people seeking a better community and equity in dividing times. Especially now, I know that you, as an individual, your organizations, and teams are confronted with how to meet goals and keep your people and your teams unified and driven. For instance, let's say you walk in a room with 10 random people with a burning, passionate message in your heart. You have worked hard to shape this message. You have brought in your lived experiences, and you believe it with your whole being. You want to enroll others in this idea, but now your idea doesn't matter anymore because the ground is shaking. Literally, our whole lives are shaking. Just a couple of months ago, we experienced an earthquake here in the Piedmont. And if we're being honest, it's still shaking. But in the midst of shaking and earthquakes, I want to remind us of something that we should always remember. When the sky gets dark enough, you can always see the stars. So the gift is exactly who you are and who you are created to be. Now, this is not a talk about how to convince people that you're smart or worthy. I'm not going to lecture you today about how to win the room with your big idea or offer pro tips about how to win at Zoom. But I do hope over the course of this talk that we'll cover something very, very, very important. In the changing times, the shifting plates underneath our feet, we need more examples of folks who are focused and able to say a message that speaks to the heart of humanity. Shifting morals, enthusiasm, pace setting, all these ideas that'll come up, I want you to just be with us. Now, my experience as a coach, a counselor, a chaplain, a pastor, and a community partner, I want to share with you 3 practices that have helped me stay stable in shifting times and allowed me to make new agreements with myself and my audience. Let's practice. The first point is ABC. I learned this as a community partner, a community organizer, and an activist. ABC stands for always be cool. A friend shared this with me in the midst of the upheaval of the State House way back in about 2012. We were activists focused on a 14-point social justice plan to expand the equity across our state. And when I tell you, being at a rally and being at a protest is not something that happens every day, even though it might seem like it right now. In those moments, keeping a clear head, having your ideas focused, and knowing that you're on the right side of history makes all the difference. But even knowing all of those points, how in those moments, even now, how we're able to stay cool. You stay cool by knowing that you've done the work. You've done the work spending time with yourself, reflecting, using the tools of bringing all the different parts of yourself that are spread out across the imaginative sky and bringing it down to who you are each and every day when you wake up. We talk about journaling. We talk about meditating. But healing really takes the time to learn your history. Learn who you are in relationship to your community. It means not only educating voters or mobilizing, it means listening. And so I advocate, to be cool, you have to listen. You have to know what is happening in your community. We do this exercise often. Say, raise your hands. We also ask you to shake them a little bit. We ask you to lift up your voice. And then we ask this important question. Where are you doing that at? What zip code? Which address? Which street? Because you have to start where you are. So, if you've lifted your hands, if you've raised your voice, I want you to just think about it. What's up the street from your house? Which stores are in your neighborhood? Who are the storytellers? Who are the story keepers where you are? Who are the people that you can talk to when you've had a rough day? These are important when we're talking about building community, and it can add to your ABC moment. Point number 2, the three-legged stool. We need to sit on a stool of democracy more than ever. But this stool has 3 important legs, and it can't survive one without the other. These 3 legs are information, knowledge, that's one leg. Access, that's another leg. And courage. What does it mean to have knowledge but not have access? What does it mean to have courage but not have the knowledge? You see, when we're talking about inclusion and coming up with innovative ideas, when we are seeing protests for rights, human rights, we have to put all of these 3 legs together so that we're not out of balance. Knowledge. Do you know what it takes to make a change in policy in your community, at your office? Do you know the steps that you have to take to petition for rights at your city council? Do you know the difference between the county commission and the city council and the state legislature? You have to have knowledge of the systems in which you live in order to be able to create the kind of impact that you desire. Access. What does it mean to have all of this knowledge about how systems work, the people in positions, if you're not one of those folks that have access to that? For far too long, there have been people on the outside of the room who are deeply and every single day impacted by what happens inside of the room. That room is the place where laws are made. That room is the place where policies, decisions are made. That is the room where budgets are accounted for. So from day to day, in our struggle and our pushing and our protests, we are actually asking, not only asking, but now demanding, how might we have access to the rooms that we need to be in? Lastly, courage. As a community organizer and activist, I've been part of and seen courageous acts in front of me. I've been part of groups that have protested and done sit-ins. I've raised my voice with those out on the streets through marches. I've been with churches who have praised their way into the streets, joining civil rights protests. And when we're thinking about what does it mean to have democracy without courage? Because when you set up something, you can believe that their problems are going to come along the way. And so you have to have the courage to speak up and say, we need to change directions. So you can have all the knowledge, you can have all the information, you can even be granted access. But if you don't have the courage to speak up for what you know is right, and to speak and stand alongside others that are striving and trying to change and make a better community, then we can't have a fully breathed democracy. Lastly, XYZ. You'll remember that I started with ABC. Well, the friend that told me about ABC also shared with me XYZ. When he sent that message to me through a text and said, you know ABC, but you need to know XYZ, I said, well, I have no clue what XYZ is inside of this message that you're trying to tell me. What he said was, if you have ABC, you're going to need the whole alphabet. So essentially, when you start a process, hang in there till the end. Water always finds its level. When we're striving for equity, which is defined as the process for historically underrepresented and marginalized populations to have equal access and participate in programs that can close the achievement gap in success, health, life expectancy, and academic performance. When that is your goal, when we say the phrase XYZ, and I mentioned to you something that I learned from my home city, water always finds its level. It is always telling us the message that though it might be difficult for a time, though the sea is swarming, though the bucket is overfilling with water, after a while, it will find its level. It is my belief that in our community, to create the kind of peace that we desire, we have to break an unauthorized peace. So when people lift their voices, when there's artwork downtown, when there are folks protesting with all of their might, hang in there. Be a part of the change that you want to see. Join with those who have a voice for inclusion, innovation, and the power that is inside of suffering people. We all need a place. We all need a space to become who we were created to be. So again, I want to share with you this message. Always be cool. Yes, the earth is shaking. Yes, our times are changing. Three-legged stool. Sit down. Understand. Knowledge, information. Gain access. Open doors. And have courage. And lastly, XYZ. We'll need every single tool that we have to create the change that we want to be. And so, as I mentioned, that we're living in a very desperate time. People will call this one of the darkest moments in this history. And so when we think about that, as I mentioned earlier, when it gets dark, you can truly see the stars. When you take away the light pollution, when you take away all of the things that will distract you, you can see the things that give us really organization for our lives. You see, the ancients always organized their lives around the star system. And so when you look up at night, I want us to think about the lives that we live here on Earth. When it's dark, you can see not only stars, but constellations, how stars are connected to one another. And so when we think about our communities, think about the very important service providers that are here, providing health care, providing on-the-ground understanding, community gardens. Think about the churches. Don't think about them as individual places of service, but think about them as connected constellations. Now, I know Ptolemy had names for them, the Little Dipper, the Big Dipper, Orion's Belt, but let's rename them. Let's think about how all that we do is connected to one another. Now, when I start talking about police accountability, or I referenced how important it is for people to have quality access to health care, or when I mention, just by chance, that the importance of education for our children is very important. All of it is connected, and none of it is separate. And so, when I say advocate for the right thing at City Council, what I mean by that is actually attend the meetings, go to the city website, learn who your representatives are in District 1, District 2, District 3. When you have to do this information, you have to do this research, take your time. I know it's a lot to take in. But when you attend these meetings, bring a journal, bring a notebook, take notes. Because every single part of this democracy that we mentioned, with those three legs, it's important for you to learn, and then not only to learn for yourself, but spread the message. On social media, such as Facebook and Twitter, there are important conversations being had each and every single day, every minute of every day. So when you take the time, there are no excuses for us not to join in the conversation. So, just like earlier this week, there was a rally at Government Plaza. We were standing up, one as another, one together as a community. It became very important for us to pause. So in a time when there is so much to grieve for, in a time where there is supernumerary pressures well above the threshold of our own emotional capacities, I want us to really pause for just a moment. So ABC is not just being cool for a protest. ABC is about being cool enough to say, I need to take a moment. There's a lot to grieve. There's a lot to really mourn in our society. And when we are grieving, we need to make that space for others to do the same. There's no need for us to continue on as if things are normal, as if we don't have emotions, and as if we don't have a real personality. It's important for us to take the time to be cool, to realize that we need each other now more than ever. And so as we move forward together as a community, and not only use ABC, the tools of the stool, and XYZ, and all the other letters of the alphabet, it becomes important for us to recognize that it takes each and every star to make a true constellation. So here in Greensboro, let's shake the ground with our humanity. Let's shake the ground with who we were created to be. Let's live into what it means to be a gate city. Let's do this work together. Because in divisive times, we need each other now more than ever.